Coming up on this week's episode of the Rip City Roundtable podcast, we have a Blazers media legend, Mr. Danny Marang, coming on the podcast. Awesome having him on the show. Get your notepad out, get your pen, take some notes. If you're driving, maybe don't do that because I don't want you to wreck. But there's so many nuggets of knowledge and tips, advice, how to cover a team, how to watch a team on this episode with this interview with Danny that y'all are gonna love it. It's a great listen. You know, as we've talked about numerous times, you're sick of me saying it. You know, the season is what the season is. We're getting closer and closer to a better lottery position. The ping pong balls might fall our way. We're getting better odds potentially to get the number one pick here. So not the way we wanted to go, but the season still has to happen. And there are lots of positives going on with the team, both on the court and off the court. And I feel like having a guy like Danny come on and chat about those things and his insights, not only just how close he is with some of the players, but the coaches and his knowledge of how to analyze what's going on the court and put those into words and on a radio show and a podcast and all the things that he does on a daily basis, covering the team that we love, covering the Trailblazers. So it's a treat to have him on the show. He, goes way back with Blazers Edge. Contributor, still is around in small capacities, so he is not completely gone, but he has so much going on, things that he's doing himself, podcast, YouTube, radio show, all the things. So this was a lot of it just kind of let him go. I mean, I think the worst thing I could do is kind of get in the way. So it was great having him on. I know you're going to enjoy this episode because we need some things to enjoy right now. And, besides the Blazers really going for that youth movement and starting a bunch of rookies and all the things, there are still things to look for and to prepare, especially as we wrap up this season and moving into the off season. So sit back, enjoy. This is a good one, long one, but it's good. There's some good content in here. So we're going to take a quick break, but then we'll come right back with Mr. Danny Marang on the Rip City Roundtable podcast. So don't go anywhere. All right, everybody, we're back from break. We're at the part of the episode that you've just been wanting to get to. So let's get to it. We have Mr. Dan or Danny. What do you like to go by?
Either one's fine.
Okay.
At Blazers Edge, I was both Dan and Danny Marang. So
okay. You were.
So long story short, I was Dan. It actually happened on the Blazers Edge podcast. This is when I ended up going back to Danny. I grew up Danny. Okay. I don't know when it changed. I never officially changed it, but it became Dan when I was in the Air Force. So I just kept it as Dan. And Tara, team mom, and I were doing a podcast with my friend from high school, Ben Golliver, at the Washington Post.
Yep.
And he kept calling me Danny. And Tara goes, "Why does he keep calling you Danny?" And I'm like, because anybody who's known me since before I was 17 knows me as Danny. And she's like, "Why am I just now learning this?" There was also two other Dans in the media market at the time.
Oh,
and I was like, you know what? Screw it, Ben. Just call me Danny. And I changed my Twitter handle as we were doing the show to Danny.
Okay.
And I transitioned to Danny.
Cool.
All because of Ben just throwing a wrench in everything. That's the only reason why I'm a grown ass man who's known as Danny. It's very weird. Good luck finding anybody 40 or near 40 years old that is a Dan that is named Danny. It just
going
doesn't
by
happen.
Danny.
It just is what it is.
That's what makes you unique and special. So Danny.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. All right, Danny. Well, let's start. Let's start at the beginning, and we don't want this to be a 9-hour podcast, but talk to us a little bit about your background, and then how did you become a Blazers fan?
Yeah. It's easier to start Blazers fan into the background. So when I was a kid, I grew up in LA. Most people know I'm an LA guy. But the first ever basketball game I ever went to was a Lakers Blazers game at the Forum. Yes, again, I'm that old.
Nice.
And as a kid, I just saw Clyde.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I know, yes, Showtime Lakers and everything, but Clyde was just cooking, and I just was like, I like him.
Hmm.
I'm going to be a fan of this team. And it just so happened, my dad had a coin toss between moving to Texas and moving to Oregon. When I was a
Oh.
kid, it was literally down to two spots. It was Dallas or Portland. And he ended up moving to Beaverton when I was a kid. And then I became a Blazers fan. Like that was kind of how that went.
Gotcha.
As I grew up, I became a much more staunch supporter of the team. I became much more invested in basketball. We didn't have a ton of money growing up, but we like the one thing that we did spend money on is my dad bought season tickets. He was able to write them off
Cool.
for the company. So that was like the
Nice.
way, like sell some off and then give
Yeah.
some to clients, and the rest we would take.
Yeah.
And over the years, I just got more and more hooked. And then I I became a giant math nerd, and I took that and kind of after 9/11, I listened to the Air Force, and ended up working in intelligence.
Cool.
Like I said, I went to high school at Ben Golliver. After I got out of the Air Force, Ben and I were talking, and he was like, "Hey, you should pop over to Blazers Edge. I know they're looking for somebody. Like I know you're kind of doing. I had started doing and working around sports analytics
Okay.
in like 2009, 10, kind of like the early frontier part of it,
Okay. Yeah.
and I started kind of doing a little bit more, and then 2011, 2012, somewhere right in that time frame, um, Dave Deckard brought me on at Blazers Edge, and I was doing the usual stuff, the early stuff that everybody starts doing. You do your recaps and your pregame rights and your previews,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and then after a couple months of that, I started doing the podcast. Dave and I started the Blazers Edge podcast up.
Yeah.
It took off
Yeah.
early in the podcast era,
Yeah.
and that transition to getting an opportunity at NBC Sports, where Joe Simons, Shane Brennan, and myself were selected to be the pre and post game show hosts, and what turned into Blazers Outsiders, and then Blazers Outsiders into doing a radio show with a good friend Dusty Hera from noon to 3 on 1080 The Fan. So that's
Oh,
kind of
cool. Yeah.
the pathway.
Nice.
Everything that happened in between is insane and irrecoverable. The absolutely impossible to replicate.
Yeah.
Um, this is why I always tell people who are interested, like, how can I get into sports? I always go, carve your own path,
Yeah.
because unless you're Iron Eagles kid,
Yeah.
unless unless there's some sort of nepotism, there's not an easy path, and there's
Yeah.
not like a straight and narrow path to walk anymore.
Yeah.
In this era, we've broken down all of the barriers, but we've streamlined it so much that anybody can do it. You just
Hmm.
have to stand out.
Yeah.
Uh, Mine, I still don't know what that is, but I keep failing upwards, so I
There
just smile and take it.
Yeah, well, I think your people that love you and people that hate you would both say
Yeah,
that
100%.
they're polarized to you. So it doesn't like whatever way it comes, they
Nobody's ambivalent about me.
no one's ambivalent about you.
Yeah.
Well, okay, go back to the sports analytics in 2009, 2010. Where
Yeah.
was this just something you were like doing on the side, like
Mhm.
on your own? Okay,
Yeah, so
what did that look
cruising
like?
on the early analytics forums, taking a look at shot diets and the math behind the game. I was really drawn to that. Like I said, I worked in the intelligence field in the military, and a lot of what I did revolved around pattern recognition.
Oh, okay.
And I specialized on threats, tactics, and procedures. So being able to take large sets of data going out to an investigation after an incident, or hell, from being in my own, taking the data learned from those incidents and then compiling them into a database, and then being able to extrapolate information from those data sets and make informed decisions about how the enemy is advancing. What are they doing? What could we possibly see them doing in the future based on X, Y, and Z, all the different variables that we could plug into things. And we used back then early geospatial mapping
Jeez.
to track attacks. And
Okay.
okay, if an attack is here and it's here and it's here, we can all of a sudden we can start seeing, you know, patterns popping up, and we could start using early algorithms to try to drive how we set up our patrols, how we moved our supplies, what areas we need to focus our aggression, so to speak. And
Yeah.
so it's a much more high leverage situation because the things that you get right or wrong can mean life or death. It's not so much the
No
same in
joke.
basketball,
Yeah, right.
but you take the lessons learned from that, and
Mhm.
and I just started applying that, number one, in my business life, because I became a private contractor as a business analyst.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and I went in and basically I was a crisis management analyst. So companies that had issues, whether they were integrating new software, enterprise resource management, or had major issues in production chains or in supply
Mhm.
chains or in velocity in their inventory, basically coming in and helping them build a better mousetrap.
Yeah.
So how do you build a better basketball player? How do you build a better
Sure.
football player? Like, I was just looking at all of the kind of different things and
Hmm.
tinkering with my own stuff. And then I started stumbling into other things, and
Yeah.
I ended up talking. One friend introduced me to another, and then I started talking to people who were like working behind the scenes in basketball analytics.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, I ended up talking to people with multiple teams, and even interviewed for a couple positions back then, which again exposed me to more opportunities and to more
Yep.
people. And
Yep.
um, as that progressed, I started letting that dictate and feed into how I would write. And
Mm.
I would write on Twitter, like long threads, like early, was it 2011?
Yeah.
Was when I really started to do that. And then I took that and started doing it at Blazers Edge, when Ben and Dave kind of came together, and you can blame them for bringing me on.
Their fault. Their fault.
100% their fault.
Yeah.
But my voice really came about from Dave. He gave me the best advice I've ever gotten in
Mm.
this world. Um, I used to write very, very technical, and I
Mm.
used to try to emulate other people, particularly in the analytics space, and how they wrote. And Dave one time just cut through all the crap. He goes, "Stop trying to write how you think you're supposed to write and start writing like you talk."
Mm.
And that was probably the single biggest change in
Mm.
how I did things. I
Yeah.
stopped trying to be what I thought I needed to be, and I just started being myself,
Yeah.
both in how I wrote and how I worked on the podcasts.
That's cool.
And that kind of unlocked everything from there. And so that's why I say, if you want to blame Dave, blame
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
because he unleashed the stupid.
I think Dave is so, and yeah, I mean, I've known him for like 8 months now. So,
Mhm.
you've known a lot, but I get the sense he's so good at being able to take a small sample size of somebody's either writing or podcast style,
Mhm.
and can really peel it apart and tell you how to be
Yeah,
better, know how to compliment you, but also like this is where the improvements need to be. And
he's a great editor. Like,
he is
that's what an editor is
that's
supposed to
what they
do.
do.
No matter, like,
You're right.
and like that, they're really good at just finding those things and,
Yeah.
peeling it back, and not even just showing you what's wrong, how to fix it, or at least
Sure.
not even how to fix it, how to change it.
Yeah.
Like, helping you explore certain things. Like I said, he knew the best way to get to me was just be like, "Hey, stupid,
Yeah.
stop doing this."
Stop doing it.
And
Yeah.
and instead of doing that, try this.
Yeah.
And it's not like it fixed everything right away,
Mm.
but I don't like talk out loud while I type, but I started very much just talking in my head,
Mm.
using that inner voice just to kind of like, this is how I'm going to write, instead of just, it became more stream of consciousness.
Mhm.
And so sometimes if you read my writing, it's like, why does this sound like he's kind of like derailing here? It's because that's what it is out on the
Yeah.
page sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what led to, in my early time, it's doing 4,000 words on the effectiveness of Mason Plumlee's screening. So yeah, no, that was a real thing.
That was a real
That was a real thing. It was his screening and rim protection and rim pressure, like three things that, like, and I broke them down. And the funny thing about that is, after I published it, I literally and figuratively ran into Mason Plumlee 24 hours later.
What did
I,
he say? Or did he read it? Or did you
yeah, he actually did.
Oh, wow. That's
So
awesome.
I know back then, when we were just pumping out original content like crazy, the team read everything. And
Wow.
I know the GMs, and I don't know about the players, but I don't think players as much read as much of that stuff now. they'll read the headlines. I don't know if they're reading the articles.
Sure.
Um,
Yep.
but I know like the team and the scout and the coaches, they read a lot of the stuff.
Hmm.
But I ran headfirst into Mason Plumlee walking out of Jamba Juice
Oh
after
my
practice.
gosh.
Because I used to live right on the corner from the practice facility, so I would
Yeah.
run into the guys pretty regularly.
Sure.
And I remember somebody said something to somebody behind me, and I kind of did a sure, and then I turned around and went like da, 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 and Mason Plumlee's 6'11" chest hits me right in the face, and I just kind of looked. I'm like, hey, what's up, Macy? Okay, nice article.
Nice.
And it was
Nice.
very sarcastic. I was like, that was my first real experience with like, okay, I didn't feel bad about it in the long run. I'm like, did I say anything that wasn't fair?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
But I ended up writing another article, like I want to say 8 months later. It was like the apology to Mason Plumlee because I extrapolated too much out of the data that wasn't. I got better understanding of what the data actually was back then and how
Okay.
much you could and couldn't rely on certain things.
Okay.
And I said, I wrote X, Y, and Z. While I stand by X and Y, I think I took Z too far
Hmm.
because the data, even though it says this, making this assumption or making this coming to this deduction isn't fair because the data isn't complete.
Yeah.
And again, like that's another thing kind of informed how I write and how I talk
Hmm.
about things is I'm number one, I'm never going to say anything or write anything that I wouldn't say to somebody's face
Yeah. Yeah.
because I talk to these guys every day.
Yeah.
And the two instances where it was slightly weird for me was the very first one with Mason Plumlee
Okay.
and another one with Yusuf Nurkic.
Okay.
Coincidentally enough, a year ago, I tweeted out that I prefer DeAndre Ayton as a big compared to Yusuf Nurkic.
Oh
And
shoot.
Nurk quote tweeted me, got big mad at me, called me an idiot, blah blah blah. You know, went all at me, and I see Nurk and talk to Nurk every game,
Yeah.
right? And he ignored me for like 3 weeks, and I can't remember
Wow.
what game it was. He was a humble Tigger in a post game press conference. You know, he was clearly going through something off the floor.
Hmm.
I can't remember what it was, but he was like, I just need to be better about this and this and this, and I'm going to be better. And I saw that attitude and I was like, this is the time to talk to him.
Yeah.
And so I shot an eye at the Blazers PR, like, I'm going to go. He's like, he knew what I was going to go do.
Sure.
And so I chased Nurk down the tunnel and I was like, Nurk. And he's like, he kind of rolled his eyes at me and go, Nurk,
Hmm.
we got to talk. And he's like, all right. And we ended up talking out, and it was one of the best conversations I've ever had with him. And
Dude.
after I got him to be like, and I go, Nurk, I've never once said anything unfair about you. I've never criticized you unfairly. I've never targeted you or like made fun of you or anything along those lines. I've always been fair. And when you've been good, I've said you've been good. I haven't held back. When you've been bad, I've said you've been bad.
Yeah.
I always treated you fairly, right? And he fully acknowledged that and agreed. And
Okay.
he ended up just kind of like, I know I just didn't like it. Was basically
Yeah.
what it came down to. And I'm like, of course not.
Sure.
You're an NBA player. You should tell me to go to hell. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
totally fine. But it really, again, it reinforced like, okay, if I'm going to say something, if I'm going to say this player is better than this player, I better A, know what the hell I'm talking about, and B, be willing to stand by it. Or if I find that I'm wrong for whatever reason, be able to and willing to accept that.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that the Blazers trade them for each other. And now stylistically, you're kind of saying the
Yeah.
Ayton limitations, but also the Ayton, positive contribution. So
Yes.
it's really, really interesting, like being in this space and being in this market now for so long. This is what, 2024, so 13 years now.
Yeah.
I've been around in this market,
Yeah.
being around guys, and it's very cool, but it's also very interesting as I get older, the things that I used to think versus what I think and know today. I think
Yeah.
it's true of anything,
Yeah.
but this is the one industry I've been in the entire time, even though I've done things elsewhere along the line.
Yeah. Well, and I think they in what most industries, right? This isn't just NBA players, but like
Mhm.
you talk about fairness, and I think they have to appreciate, yes, They may not like it if they're not playing well, and you're going to notice because you know the game, and you're going to write something that's fair criticism, and that's hard to take, but at least it's fair. And so that has to end of the day be a good meter for your writing style, but also how you can critique. Because if they're playing well, you're going to give them their flowers. If they're not playing well, you're going to. But shouldn't that motivate them to be better? Or
Well,
ideally,
I mean, they don't care what I think in a nutshell. Any media thinks, but I have had, I don't know, probably 10, 15 players over the years who have either texted me or pulled me aside and asked me what I think about, their play, or I've written something like, okay, why do you think this? And I've gone through it with them.
Yeah.
Like I've gone through when I've talked about playbook breakdown stuff. I've had players and coaches pull me aside and go, okay, I'm not mad at you, but you said you saw this, and I understand what you're trying to get to. However, the process that we go through in this play, we're actually looking for this, this, and this instead. So I get the context, I get the background, and then I'll go back and go, hey, guys, I thought they were trying to do this, but in fact, they're trying to do this, this, and this. And so it's opened up really, really good communication pathways, because I've always been open to that dialogue. And as long as they're willing to have that, I'm like, yeah, tell me. Like, if I'm wrong, tell me.
Yeah. But I think it's good to have, not that you're an outsider because you're around the team every day and you're communicating with players every day and coaching staff, but it's good to have somebody else's perspective that isn't player, coach, GM, whatever,
in the bubble.
Yeah. And I know you're around it all the time, but it still is helpful. I think if they said, now forget what Danny's saying, he'd know what he's talking about. It's like, no, that's the wrong statement. And that's you just putting your head in the sand. So I think it's good.
And that did happen in the previous administration.
I bet that happened quite a bit. A lot of sand, a lot of head in it.
Previous administration tried to get me fired. So, I don't mince my words with when it comes to that stuff.
Sure.
It's different. And I know that people think I carry water for the organization now, and it's all very funny. It's just, they're just to the point of they're doing the stuff that I want them to do now.
Yeah.
So when they stop doing that, you'll start hearing me being pissed off again.
Yeah.
I didn't get mad at Neil until he started really going off the rails.
Until he goes off the rails. I thought it showed a lot of, not maturity by Joe, but this summer, first year GMs don't play that situation like he did. And I thought he did a really good job. He held true, didn't panic, where I think a lot of GMs and other teams in that situation make a bad play there. And then they put the organization back 10 years.
In a bad spot. Yeah.
In a bad spot. And I think that, with every day there was everyone's talking about it, right? Where's Dame that day? And he handled that so well. And I mean, I don't know him. I don't know him, but
even if you don't agree with the return, he was losing in the, I wrote about this in my Patreon, and it's still pinned on my Twitter page. It's free and unlocked if you want to read it. Yeah. But it's insight from the Blazers side of things and Dame's side of things. My sources are the two people involved.
Yeah.
You won't get any tighter than that.
Yeah.
They both regret how things went at points, and they both wish they would have done things differently at points. If you put a gun to the Blazers' head, I bet you they wish they wouldn't have been so loud and rattled sabers about being hyper aggressive and building around Dame, and being eager to overspend to build around him. And I bet you Dame wishes they wouldn't have been so loud about forcing him to Miami. So all that stuff, I think where Joe did best was the press conference in Las Vegas, where he kind of took control back of the situation and said, and it's not something I think most PR departments would tell him to not do, but he fell on the sword and said, I failed. I failed Dame. It's on me.
Yeah.
And he owned that, which
he did.
I don't think he necessarily failed Dame. I think he failed Dame in a very short amount of time, where the previous GM failed in 9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he took that, and it was sincere. And then he did what he thought was best for the organization, and what he thought was best for Dame.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very, very difficult thing to do. And I know in the moment Dame was frustrated, but I know that he's happy with where he is now.
Yeah.
He's where are the Miami Heat? Are they
Yeah.
in the play-in? Where are the Milwaukee Bucks? Are they in the play-in? No? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which one could you see like contending for a title right now?
Sure. Totally. And I love that, like, what he comes out, was it the Bulls game when we played the Bulls, and he's sitting
Yeah,
courtside?
Dame and Beckner drove down from Chicago. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know more into it than just seeing him at the game, and I'm assuming he's
Mhm.
there supporting the team or just checking out a game. But he's like,
He's literally so Phil Beckner is Dame and Ant's trainer,
yeah,
and Phil was with Dame. Phil flies out to Dame regularly and flies out to see Ant regularly.
sure,
And Phil was like, "Hey, Ant's in town. Let's drive an hour and 20 minutes." And so
yeah, that's cool.
Phil and Dame boogied down from Milwaukee to Chicago because Dame is like a brother to Ant.
Yeah,
It's not like it is an like that's Unk to Ant. Like
yeah,
that is his guy. And so and Dame poured into him and continues to pour into him.
yeah, yeah,
So that opportunity being there, Dame did not hesitate to go see him.
yeah. No, I loved that. I think that was cool. Um, all right. You mentioned you were a crisis advisor. What?
That's basically what I worked as. I was a business analyst that came in and helped companies get through integrations.
Okay.
So companies would get giant enterprise resource planning systems put into their companies that
Okay.
would basically put sales teams, manufacturing or production teams, customer service teams, finance teams,
Yeah.
inventory, and put you all on the same system.
Yeah. But
You would transition from one to another.
okay. But it was
Uh,
when it was during those transition times where they were
yes,
moving
so
from one to, okay.
I would come as a contractor. Usually be anywhere from 10 to 16 months because
Okay.
those processes take a very long time.
Oh yeah.
I helped one company move warehouses from one side of the country to the other while
Sure.
keeping their inventory live and moving
Okay.
in a massive warehouse
Yeah.
with upgraded technology. Like it all kind of depended on where and when, but it was always like, how do I solve this problem? It was always
Yeah.
something different. Like, how do we
Sure.
solve this problem?
Okay. I love that, Danny. So you're the crisis advisor for the Blazers this season.
Mhm.
We're transitioning from an era with Lillard to
Mhm.
a new era. What is the Mr. Marang crisis advisor? How does he transition this team into this new era? What do you think are the key transactions or movements? What needs to happen? Clearly, this season, development, get young guys out there, uh, figure out what we have moving into this offseason. What would be your, like, first thing you come in and do?
The biggest question is where does the lottery go? Because everybody talks about how flat this lottery is, but I think the Blazers can address some of their issues, some of their needs, depending on where they end up. They have to sort out their backcourt, and they have to get some shooting on this team. They have to get playmaking. The team has to make more sense.
Mm,
Um, I don't know if they have a foundational building block. Everybody knows the Ants, he's my guy. I love him as a person and as a player. I think he's a hell of a player.
yeah,
He's still got to figure out if he can be a star,
yeah,
and he's working on that. The injuries have been a problem, but also trying to figure out how he plays alongside Scoot has been difficult because they're both ones. And so having to figure out how and when that's going to work, whether that's Ant starting and Scoot starting or Shaden starting and
hmm,
Scoot coming off the bench and then working that 3 guard rotation. I think that's more viable going forward, at least for another year. When they drafted Scoot, I said going into next summer, they need to have an answer, whether it's Scoot or Ant. If they do it before then, I think it's probably premature. But
hmm,
if you're going to, much like moving on from Dame, if you're going to make a decision, make a decision.
yeah,
Like I can't fault you if you think you have the data to make that decision. I
yeah,
may disagree, but along those lines, I think it's okay. Um, so the big thing for me is where do they land in the lottery? Let's say they land top 3. Okay, can you get a guy like Sar, who defensively I think profiles as a guy that can anchor a team entirely?
mm,
And you already have DeAndre Ayton, who has shown that when he is locked in, can be uh, a centerpiece defensively for a finals team. And so
Yeah.
now you've got a front court that could absolutely unequivocally anchor you defensively.
Yeah.
If it's Riza Shea, you've got a 6'10" guy who at bare minimum shoots the hell out of the ball. Like he's shooting 45% in France right now. Like nobody's questioning whether or not Riza Shea can shoot.
Sure.
He's passable defensively to average. He's hyper competitive, but he's also very young. If it's Cody Williams, the thing about him is I think you're probably a year away from seeing him being a more functional player because he's so young.
Yeah.
The things I think if you're talking about crisis management as it pertains to this organization is this fan base. I'll say it and I'll piss the comments off, is not built for this.
Yeah.
It's not, they're losing their minds after 1 year of this. And stop with this. It's been 3 years. It hasn't been 3 years. If Damian Lillard is on your team, you are not rebuilding. You're screwing around for 2 years, or you're not sure for 2 years.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
The first year, you got Neil Olshey fired. You have interim GM. Things are crazy. You throw the first year out. The second year, when they get their feet underneath them, I don't think they knew exactly what they wanted to do, or both. Dame and Joe, neither one was willing to admit that a change needed to happen.
Yeah.
Which it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know both of them would say if they could do it all over again, they would have done it earlier.
Sure.
Just because like where things were and how things fell apart around Neil.
Yeah.
That separation should have happened going into 2021.
Yeah.
Like that's where it would have made sense for both sides. But again, back to this right now. In a perfect world, they have 1 more year. I think that this fan base is going to get super restless and not be able to handle being a 25-win team again.
Yeah.
And so I don't think there's necessarily pressure to get wins to be in the play-in, but I think there's enough pressure to like show progress.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate because going into next year, the draft is so much better.
Oh.
There's probably 7 guys in next year's draft right now that you would consider taking number 1 over the entirety of this class.
Wow.
That's just, it's not that next year's draft is that much better. It's that much more top heavy.
Yeah.
Because from one, or if you want to say the top 3 guys are different, fine. If you want to say Topic is that guy, you want to say Williams is that guy, whatever you want to say. But from 4 through 17,
yeah,
it's the eye of the beholder.
Sure.
It's but next year, yeah, it's Cooper Flagg, it's VJ Edgecombe, it's Ace Bailey. Like you just kind of go down the list. You're like, oh my god, like it's Common Malik. You know, you just start running through guys. Where you're like, yeah, no, that's like in some drafts, that's a guy that you're going, it's an absolute dude.
Yeah.
We knew coming into this draft this year that this draft was going to be this.
Yeah.
Everybody has talked about it for 18 months.
Sure. They knew. Yeah.
So the Blazers can't divorce the fan expectations and wanting something to hold on to and latch on to.
Yeah.
And tanking.
Yeah.
The unfortunate side of this is there's not an organization on the planet in the NBA or in the country in the NBA that can be like, yeah, no, we did this without tanking.
Yeah.
Because every single team right now at the top has.
Yeah.
Whether it was the Suns to get, guys like Booker and then to ultimately have guys at the top that turned in or turned out to be a number 1 overall pick, whether or not that guy's still with them now.
Sure.
But he was flipped for other things. Like
Yeah.
you need to churn all that stuff up and you need to be successful.
Yeah.
Even the Celtics, they trade back so they can get Tatum.
Yeah.
And, instead of, and be like, but it's still a top 3 pick. And then you get Jaylen Brown and you start kind of going through, like, there's a period of time that you either have to get lucky and get the Nets picks and they sucked and the Celtics got those.
Yep.
Or you stumble into a Spursian generational talent.
Yeah.
So crisis management, if I just said, forget the fan base.
Yeah.
I would say, do what is best to optimize this team going forward. Which is prioritize the positions you need to prioritize in the draft, take the best player available. But if he's 6'1", be prepared for pitchforks and torches.
Yeah.
It's not going to go well.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I don't think that either Rob Dillingham or Reed Shepherd are that guy.
Sure.
I think you're looking at Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, and Reed Shepherd, and I think you're looking at Malik Monk and Rob Dillingham, which good players.
Yep.
Good players, but I don't think you need to worry about, oh my God, they didn't pick the best player available who's 6'1".
Yeah.
But I think they need to figure out who their foundational pieces are, because with Shaedon's injury, they don't know what Shea is. With Scoots, being young and incredibly slow, poor start, and then up and down season, you don't really know what he is.
Yeah.
So this sounds terrible, but like they need a gap year. Like, because they weren't able to collect the data they needed to collect. You have two paths. You can make decisions on incomplete data, or you can try one more time. And the thing about trying one more time is, what do you hurt? You're not wasting Scoot's prime. You're not wasting Shaedon's prime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at things and you want this team to be the best version of itself going forward, you don't want them trying to skip steps. Now, if it involves trading away Malcolm Brogdon, hell, if it involves trading away Jeremy Grant, but for deals that make sense, for something that, or even Anthony, if it makes sense going forward, and it doesn't skip steps or put you in a bad financial space, or just do it to put, butts in seats, then fine.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be a completely and totally holistic rebuild. God, I sound like a GM. A holistic rebuild.
Holistic rebuld. Who are we talking to?
God.
No.
But that's like I'm getting like GM brain rot now. But like that's what I would say was like, look, you guys you're not the Washington Wizards, but you're not the Oklahoma City Thunder of 2 years ago.
Sure.
You're in between that, and you've got to find something. And if that means you need to go, take the shortcut through hell and suck for one more year, you probably should.
You probably should. I mean, like you said, don't, if there's a move to make it, but don't put yourself in a bad position.
I don't think this is the summer to force things.
Yeah.
I think next summer is the summer to force action.
Yeah.
Like that's like, they need to make changes and they need to optimize the roster. It needs to make sense going forward. There needs to be paths to minutes for Scoot, for Shaedon. Malk can't be a part of this going forward. It's just, it can't. Yeah. I think you need to start looking at finding ways to get Chris Murray on the floor. How about ways to get Ryan Rupert? If Roops is going to be here and be a part of this team going forward, I'm a big Roops guy. Anybody doesn't know that? Yes, the second they drafted him, I was thrilled. Yeah. But if he's not going to play, stick him in the G League immediately and put him in the incubator.
Yeah.
Like they were going to do that with him this year. They picked up so many injuries. He had to be held basically in emergency reserve for the organization for months at a time.
Months. Yeah. And for small stretches, he showed flashes. I mean,
he's so young, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but he's an incredible kid. I don't know how many people know this. Roops is Muslim.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so he's been fasting for Ramadan.
Wow.
And yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No.
So
way.
it's, an NBA schedule as a rookie fasting through Ramadan, getting exposed to like heavy minutes right now. It was funny. I did not realize he was Muslim until late in the season, right as Ramadan started, when after the game, the chefs bring in food for a lot of the players, and particularly for Roops because he's fasting.
Yeah.
And he starts eating this pasta so fast. And I go, Roops, slow down, bro. It's not going anywhere. And he's like pauses and gets all wide-eyed. He goes, sorry, I'm fasting. And I was like, it like clicked to me. I'm like, are you Muslim? And he's like, I'm like, dude, go. Hey, handle business. Carb up, buddy.
Do your thing.
But those are the kind of things when we don't necessarily, that's a very specific one.
No, that's a good example.
An adjustment that guys go through.
Yeah.
That's a very drastic one.
Yeah.
In their life. And like, everybody thinks, oh, these guys are in great shape. It's like, well, yeah, but there's game shape. And going from like Chris Murray to like not really playing, to playing 25, to playing 35. And like, those are very, very, to not playing, to playing a little bit more, now getting more shots up, to playing a little bit more, getting more shots up. And also, hey, I know you've never guarded guards, but how about you guard guards at the NBA? Have fun. This happened 2 years ago with Anthony Simons.
Mm.
Ant was like forced to play point guard because of Dame's core injury, and people were killing him because he had like a bad turnover night. And I remember him going, "Why are people killing me? I've never played point guard in my life, and I'm playing point guard in the NBA. Please tell them I've never played point guard before." Like, like
Danny, please communicate this to everyone.
He was like, "Bro, I had 32 points and 6 assists. Yes, I had 5 turnovers, but I've never played point guard in my life. Please tell them I'll clean it up." Like, he was half joking, but he was serious. Like, he's like, "I've been a 2 guard my whole life."
Oh,
And so, like,
man.
people think that because basketball player, this guy's a professional basketball player, they know how to do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same thing is true up and down every roster in the NBA.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting when you see guys day to day, you know what the work goes in, you know guys who work and guys who don't.
Mm-hmm.
And you know kind of like what goes into it, what they're doing. Like Roops is a maniac.
Mm-hmm.
Like even guys who I know who work hard look at me and go, mm-mm. That like this kid lives in the gym.
Wow.
This is all he does. He eats, breathes, he sleeps, eats, hoops.
Yeah.
This is when he was drafted, I had somebody with the New Zealand Breakers that I called and was like, "Hey, can you kind of fill me in on him personally? Like, what's he like? What's his attitude? What's his work ethic?" And he goes, "Look, I hate throwing this around because it gets thrown around." He goes, "He's got Kobe like work ethic."
Whoa.
He goes, "He's in the gym at 4:00 in the morning before we do our practices, and then he's after practice working out. Like, he's a maniac."
Wow.
And all the coaches will tell you right now that nobody has put more shots up at the PF this year than Roops, like by a pretty substantial margin.
Wow.
So they've got the NOAA tracking software.
Okay. So this is like actually tracked.
Oh,
like,
yeah, you know. So every shot in the practice facility is tracked and charted for every player.
Whoa.
And this, I found this out. I thought they only used it during like actual practice sessions or like when guys would come in and do their individual workouts, but it's on all the time.
Dude.
And for those that don't know, the NOAA tracking sensor tracks like your ball spin, trajectory, release angle, release point. Like it tracks everything.
Whoa.
So it'll tell you like, oh, it's your release angle is a little flat, or your release angle is a little high, or you've got more backspin on your release, or you're deviating 1 degree left or 1 degree right, or the consistency of your jump shot is more consistent than the other. Like Chris Murray. I go, this was a non-recorded conversation. It was on background, but I've already talked about it, so it's fair.
Okay.
I go, "Chris, I'm going to sound like a bleepity bleep here. I don't mean it to sound like that, but how are you so good at shooting corner threes right now, but you're missing above the break threes by feet?"
Wow.
And he goes, "It's a mental thing." He goes, "It's something I need to figure out." And I go, "So it's not a mechanical thing?" He goes, "No. At the practice facility, the NOAA tracking data, I'm the most consistent guy on the team.
Wow.
Like as far as like deviation from jump shots. So
yeah.
That replication you would expect to transfer from there to there. But in talking to shooting coaches and development coaches around the league, they're like, there's a difference between practice speed and game speed, and Chris needs to figure out what it's like and how to get in that rhythm. So when he takes threes and above the break and he misses, just watch, because he wears it on his shoulder. You'll see him, a word will slip out. But when he hits one, watch him smile.
Okay.
Watch him, because he's like, that one felt good. And like those are the little things that I live for, man.
Yeah.
Like watching guys figure something out and put it together and having fun. Jabari Walker said this a couple weeks ago. I realized that I play my best basketball when I smile more. And I go, so I just started smiling more.
Jeez.
And now, so if you see me just smiling after elbowing somebody, it's because I'm having fun. And it was like, yeah, you're getting paid billions of dollars to have fun.
I would smile. I would smile
it,
too. Yeah,
right.
Sure.
So like, I know I'm all over the place right now. Like these are the kind of things that you get from being around the team, and it also keeps me from losing my mind when they're losing game after game after
Yes,
game, and you're
totally.
talking about it. So,
Yeah.
like, it's been an adjustment because when I first started covering this team was Damian Lillard's rookie year,
Mm.
and there was a lot of hope, and you had a lot of veterans, and LaMarcus has already been an all-star. Um, and then through the Damian Lillard era, you knew every given night you were covering a team that could go out there and win every
Yeah.
night,
Yeah.
even against the best teams in the league.
Mhm.
Dame can get this.
Yeah.
Like if it's within 5 with the final 5 minutes,
Yeah.
throw your hands up, right?
Yeah. For sure.
And that's gone.
Yeah.
That's gone. And they don't have, whether it's Scoot, Shea, Ant, that guy hasn't shown themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the hardest part about doing the crisis management
Yeah.
is that they need to find that guy or one of those three needs to step to the fore.
Yeah.
And so it sounds so terrible to like kind of kick the can, but they need to just keep progressing the way that they are, or capitalize on some young star being frustrated somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your two options. It's
Yeah.
either that or you can go back to mediocre,
Yeah.
which I don't want. Like selfishly, I don't want this team to be mediocre.
Yeah.
Like it's good for the team. It's good for the fan base. You have something good every single night. Like, hey, it's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
I If for nothing else, I want this team to be good because selfishly, it would kick ass to cover a winner.
Yeah.
Like as much as I'm like, I love talking about development and everything else. I want to cover the development phase. I want to cover OKC. I want to
Yeah.
cover the development phase to a team that looks like it's trending towards a title contending team.
Yeah.
That's what I like. That's what I want to see happen. And if
Yeah.
that means, another year of trying to figure something out, then so be it.
Hmm.
That's where I'm ultimately at with this. It's like I don't want to see them tear off the Band-Aid and then try to put it back on.
Sure. I think this is probably your first season, Danny. We're covering the team without an all-star on it.
It is.
Would that be true?
Yeah,
I think
it
that's
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what I'm saying. There's always something.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to the Blazers PR at All-Star Weekend or before All-Star Weekend. And I'm like, you guys going? Like, yeah, Scoot and Shea are going to go for the Rising Stars.
Yeah.
And I should say Ashton. Ashton went for the G League All-Stars.
Mm.
But those guys were out of there on like Saturday.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they packed up, got out of there quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just different,
Mm.
and that's the thing is that, and as of right now, they don't have a guy who projects to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so until you do, what are you doing? Because you look at the
Sure.
teams that are competing right now,
Yeah.
if you don't have at least a top 10 guy,
Yeah.
you're not going to be there.
You're not contending. Yeah.
What one team in the modern era that's
Mhm.
done it without a top 10 guy, and he's the guy coaching the team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He is.
Like,
That's true.
so it's just such a it's frustrating. I
Sure.
get that, and I understand why fans are frustrated and why sell the team and fire Joe and fire Chauncey, because it's so much easier to have a boogeyman. Because if you fire them, what you're saying is I want hope.
Yeah.
Because right now they're not hopeless,
Mhm.
but Scoot starting off so poorly, Shaden getting injured, Ant getting injured, the roster not making sense, it derived hope
Yeah.
very early from the season, and you could see what it was going to be very quickly.
Yeah. For sure. For
So,
sure. What do you think? So, like a surprise player from this season, and there might be maybe even a handful. I'm thinking of, maybe you're going to narrow it down to two or three, but who
it's
has
two.
been that?
It's two, there's two players, but it's two.
Yeah.
Tumani.
Yeah.
Coming out of camp, I heard he might start, and I was like,
Hmm.
okay, maybe we're a little too high on our own supply here, guys. Let's chill a little bit, right? Two is a mother bleeper in
Mm.
every sense of the word, and he's a great human.
Mhm.
Very like this season post game, two of my favorite people to talk to are Two and Chris.
Okay.
Just because they're constantly thinking about their development, their game, new things they're learning, things they're seeing. Not only developing as a player, but developing mentally, developing emotionally, developing as a young man,
Yeah.
right? And they're both very bright, very, very, very bright, very thoughtful. The way they see things. Again, they're older rookies,
Yeah.
but they're very thoughtful in the things that they say. Very insightful with the things that they say, and they're very honest. So the Blazers went through that road trip from hell. They get the crap kicked out of them. They had kind of a come to Jesus meeting after the Knicks game, where it wasn't a players only meeting or a coaches meeting or like something nasty. It was more of a festivus. It was an airing of grievances.
Yeah.
And the players all got to say their piece, and Chauncey got to say his. And when Chauncey went around after everything else and said, "Okay, I understand what you're saying. We'll take a look at this and this and this," because expectations were X and the season went Y very quickly.
Yeah.
And the injuries were just ruining the vibes on top of everything else.
Yeah.
And out of that meeting, 2 got his role reset, and 2 flat out said, "I think I got a little too high on my own supply. I thought that because I was starting, I could do X, Y, and Z instead of doing the things that got me there." And it humbled me, and it made me understand, no, I need to do this. And that reset and that understanding and that communication with Chauncey of what expectations were and what goals were, and if I wanted to do more, I needed to make sure I was doing all of this first, really helped me reset. And you could see it come in his play. Like you started to go up and just kind of take back off again.
Yeah.
And it was a simplification, but also an expanding of his offensive role. And Chauncey continuously hits on this. I want to be the best next action guy in the league. Get it and shoot it, get it and attack, or get it and pass. Keep it moving, keep it moving. Don't let the ball stick. And that kind of thing can just keeping the ball popping one way or the other and not letting the defense settle allows a guy like who's not an elite offensive force in the NBA to be more effective, to impact the game more. And as he started to do that, it started to open up for him. Defenses had to rotate a little bit quicker, had to close out a little bit faster, had to make decisions faster. And then Chauncey started empowering him by putting him in pick and rolls as the screener and letting him make plays as the roll man 4-on-3, which I think is kind of the future for 2.
Okay.
If he's going to be effective offensively, it's going to be with 2 things. It's going to be with his ability to knock down a quarter 3, but also his ability to work as a playmaker on odd man situations. With Chris, early in the season, I was like, you wasted a first round pick on this guy. Like he looks horrible, whatever you want to say. And coming out of that, Chris's confidence was shot in the beginning of the season. And he went down to the remix, and I went down for his remix games, and I was talking to Jim Moran, the remix coach, and he goes, "This kid can play, man." He goes, he needs to build it back up. And he went down there and balled out, came back up. It didn't show right away, but he got like little snippets here or there, and you're like, there it is.
Yeah.
Like keeping the ball moving, making a rotation without needing to be told. His nickname is Mr. Perfect, by the way.
Okay.
Because Chauncey will tell him something and he never has to tell him again.
Sure.
Like he doesn't make the same mistakes.
Yeah.
He's very, very, very sharp. And if you tell him to do something, he just takes it and goes. Here we go. We'll go weird Chris Murray fact time.
Yes.
Chris Murray, left-handed, actually, his dad tried to teach him. So him and his dad and Keegan are all left-handed.
Okay.
Keegan shoots right-handed. His dad tried to force him to shoot right-handed. He went, "Nah, I'm shooting left-handed." So he does everything left-handed, where Keegan does. He shoots right-handed, but he's left-handed.
Wow.
As weird as that is.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just a weird one that you told me a couple weeks ago, and I was like,
yeah, that's a good
one.
No. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I mean, Chris is just where he's at on the court, doing small things and putbacks,
working the dunker spot,
spot.
As little kick on a roll. The ball hits his hands and he kicks it back again. Defensively is the really fun one. I asked him about guarding guards and guarding primary ball handlers. And he lit up and he goes, I've never done that before. And I'm like, what do you mean? I remember I watched your college tape. You guarded 3s and 4s and occasionally 5s. And I go, have you never guarded ball handlers? He's like, no, never. He goes, it's fun. He goes, it was a little weird. He goes, trying to navigate screens so much, but he kind of looked around the room. He goes, kind of turns out I'm good at it. And he's got this big smile on his face. And I was like, yeah, you are. Like, you navigate screens really well for a guy who's 6'7". Like, you don't like, is he a all defensive player? No, but like, is he a plus defensive player as a rookie? Yes, he is leaps and bounds better than most rookies are defensively. It's very interesting. Like, but those two in specific, both for their on-court and off-court growth, their confidence, their understanding, their progression, their profile for what I think they can be going forward. It doesn't necessarily mean that I think that they're going to be stars. I think they're just going to be very good in their role. I think Two is going to be a very solid, like, he's already like not good for a rookie defensively, but he's just good defensively. I have talked to 6 starting point guards in the NBA about Two. This was earlier in the season. And I asked them about Two picking them up full court. And all of them did some version of throwing their head back, rolling their eyes, and cussing at me.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, I hate that guy. And they did it with a smile. Like, they all were like, God, he just wears me. Like, and so, like, and I was like, how is he defensively? Like, rookies with that size, like that ability, that tenacity, don't see that very often. Like, and so he projects defensively as an on-ball guy very well. He's going to be in the league defensively alone. If he can figure out the other stuff, he's going to be a plus role player. Like, if he advances enough offensively, it's very easy for me to see him being a 5th starter on a very good, like, high level team.
Did Joe and the staff, I mean, when because he's kind of known as the throw-in player in the Dame trade, right? Like, we do this.
No, they pushed incredibly hard for Two.
They did.
Phoenix did not want to give him up. I've gotten that from both sides.
Okay.
So Phoenix was like, because right now, what is the thing that Phoenix needs more than anything outside of a point guard? They needed Tumani. Like, they need a guy to, like, so Book doesn't have to guard somebody, so KD doesn't have to guard somebody, so Beal doesn't have to guard somebody. Like, it is huge for them right now. Like, they did not want to give up Two, and the Blazers targeted Two.
Wow.
So,
okay. I mean, I was curious.
It's an interesting spot.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. All right. Okay, Danny. Man, we'll literally talk all night. I want to wrap it up. I want you to talk about Jack Ramsey, the podcast.
Yep.
When did this podcast start? Talk to me about the history of it, your co-host, kind of your style of it. Give me a little bit of that.
So when Outsiders went away, there was talk about doing a podcast with another company or a show with another company, and things just didn't come together. And then things fell apart around the Blazers. And I was like, I'm just going to control everything. And so I started putting it together, and I did it on my own loosely for, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks. It was like, all right, let's try this. Let's see what happens.
Okay.
And I started from scratch. I had Brandon Sprague on. Brandon and I have been friends for a long time. He's actually how I got the radio job.
Cool.
I filled in with him one morning, and one thing kind of led to another. That's a different story in itself. But after I had Brandon on, I was like, hey, when we got done, I'm like, hey, do you just want to do this? And he was like, honestly, man, I was hoping you'd ask. And I was like, cool. So Brandon and I started right out of the gate doing that. I wanted to continue writing and doing my own thing, kind of growing my own empire, as it were. It's stupid as that sounds, because I didn't understand where this space was going to go. And by that, I don't just mean me, I mean sports media. So I started looking at, how can I control this myself? How can I monetize this myself? How can I have all of the oversight and creative process all be mine? So the only person telling me no is me. And not that Dave ever told me no.
Yeah.
Dave was always great with stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever did tell me no. But I just wanted to, like, with SB Nation, things, changes happen from the time that I started till that point. And I went, I would rather not be a part of not just the SB Nation stuff, but just that whole ecosystem. I just wanted to control everything myself.
Yeah.
And then I started doing the Patreon, and I was doing pre and post game last year, and then the season went sideways at the end. They tanked, and we stopped doing those. And I made a decision this year that I was not going to do that. I will bring them back when it starts, I think, mattering for more than 40 games in a season.
For sure.
But it's just having that ability to grow that. And then if I ever get the opportunity again to kind of push that kind of idea forward again, whether it's a part of a bigger, system or not, I just get to control everything. The cool thing about doing the Patreon is that I can expand upon larger stuff. I can spend an hour and a half with Patreons who want to dive into film and watch stuff the way that I watch stuff. Like, hey, here you go. You want to dive in on this prospect and see how I got this, which is something I have going on coming up here in a couple weeks. We're going to dive into, like, I've got access to all of the film libraries that exist for scouts. And so I can dive in. You want to watch every single clip of Zachary Rizachet? Let's do it.
Yeah.
You want to watch every second of Alex Sarr? Let's do it. You want to dive into whatever prospect? I've got access to the film. Let's do it. And doing that kind of thing and building that community has been huge. And then I can also use it next Tuesday, the second Tuesday. I lose track of my days. I think it is.
Yeah.
April 2nd. It's an off day for the Trailblazers. They're playing the Hornets. Chris Murray is going to be on the show.
Oh, cool.
So, perfect example is, like, I can bring those guys on and ask questions and bring some of the conversations that we have in the locker room to light and kind of have those back and forth. Like, I've been doing those with a lot of the young guys over the years, whether it's Anthony Simons or Gary Trent Jr., Jabari Walker, Nasir Little. Like, those are the guys. Like, I think to me, Dame's story is always going to get told. The top players' stories are always going to get told. Player development is my single favorite thing about the NBA.
Yeah.
I love watching guys figure it out. And so bringing them on when they're young and understanding the process and being able to look back over the year, like looking back at 18-year-old Anthony Simons is hilarious. Like, I bust his ass about it all the time.
Yeah.
I was like, anytime we get done with a post game, interview or just him and I talking, it'll just be one of those random, like, do you know how hard it was for me to, like, pull more than 2 words out of you 5 years ago? Good God, man. Now I can't get you to shut up. It's kind of one of those things. It's like, it's fun. You build those relationships, and it's super fun. And that's another part of Jack Ramsey's, is because it's mine. I can decide how it works, when it works, where it works, and who it works for. And that's what I really do like about it.
That's cool, man. Well, it's a great product. It's an awesome show. I love listening to it.
It's okay. And we don't need to gas it up. It's just
you do good. No, you do well. You do well, Danny. No, I'm glad that, like you said, nothing was ever like, oh, hey, you can't do this, Danny, or whatever. But
no, I want to reiterate, to be totally clear. I never had any issues at SB Nation. The only reason I quote unquote left, which I haven't really left. I'm still in the Slack chat.
You're still there.
I'll chip in something here every now and then.
Yeah.
But was when I left for Outsiders.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, I'm doing this for, every game day for 6 hours a day. Like, it just became a bigger thing. But no, Dave and back then Seth Pollock was the editor of SB Nation. I have nothing but incredible things to say about both of them.
Yeah. Well, and Dave in particular, and I told you this before we got on, is like, he just thinks the world of you. And
he's not very smart for that, but I love him.
He knows what he's talking about. Oh man. Well, Danny, this is incredible, dude. I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, anytime.
So where's everybody catching you? The radio show?
Radio shows noon to 3 every day, 1080 The Fan, 1080 AM. You can watch on YouTube, youtube.com/1080 The Fan, or twitch.tv/1080 AM The Fan. And then you can sign up for the Patreon at patreon.com/Jack Ramsey's. And then Jack Ramsey's is available youtube.com/Danny Marang, or get Jack Ramsey's wherever you get podcasts. And then if you ever have questions for the Jack Ramsey show, you either tweet at me at Danny Marang or jackramseys@gmail.com.
Perfect. Dude,
So many
Love it.
places.
So many places. They can hunt you down. They're gonna find you. They'll find you, Danny.
One way or the other. It's got to hide from the
Way.
IRS.
I love it. Well, hey, dude, enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks again for coming on the pod.
Hey, anytime, man.
All right, see you. All right, everybody. Man, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. There were parts and times while Danny was talking, I just was like taking it all in, man. I was like, oh, shoot, we're doing a podcast here. Like, we're doing this together. We're recording. It was just great getting to chat with him and just get those insights. Like, you don't get that stuff many places. And so it was a treat having him on this podcast. Obviously, you can check him out on Jack Ramsey's and the YouTube, both in the podcast, his radio show he does every day. And we're lucky to have him. I really think we're lucky to have him covering the team. I know he's polarizing, like he said. You either love him or you hate him. And but I think there needs to be a guy like that around every team, because you got to give fair, honest takes on what's going on. And in order to do that, you might rub people the wrong way sometimes. And I know this summer was a lot towards Danny just because of Lillard's situation and what Joe Cronin was going to do and all, and just how does the team make the right decision? And you can't make everybody happy. And sadly, there was a big decision and we had to trade Dame. And I think because Danny is so close to the team, he had a lot of good insights, a lot of good insights, and a lot of connections there. And I think you kind of take a lot of heat for it either way. But it's been it was good chatting with him. We're lucky to have him on. Hopefully, have him back soon as we get closer to the draft and learn more about kind of we'll know officially where the Blazers sit at that point and what they should be doing with the draft picks. So anyway, thanks for listening. We always appreciate you. We're here because of you. I don't want to talk into air, and we're lucky that we have a good growing listener base, and y'all are awesome with your feedbacks and opinions of the show, and I enjoy that so much. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of your week, and remember, it's a great day to be a Blazer.